community, the week including Earth Day and Arbor Day, with lots of community events to celebrate spring and tips to preserving our planet. Thank you for coming out today. It was raining before, and now, fortunately, it's clearing up. You're all in for a real treat, so here we go. Did you ever wonder about the size of your carbon footprint? Well, that's a challenging question. It used to be, did you make your bed? Do you talk back to your mother? You floss your teeth? Wear sensible shoes? But now it's all about the size of your carbon footprint. And if you're thinking it might be a bit hefty, well, you came to the right place. Let me back up a minute. What is a carbon footprint anyway? Well, your carbon footprint is the sum of all CO2 emissions resulting from your activities during a given time period. It's the total direct and indirect impact that your activities have on the environment through burning of fossil fuel. Examples include the electricity that you use to light your house, to run your computer or your cell phone, the transportation you use, such as a car, train, or plane, and the food you eat, including everything from the lettuce you grow in your backyard to imported beef, and the water and coffee you drink, including how it is produced and packaged. The adverse effects of our collective daily practices over decades winds up in news headlines as melting polar ice caps, endangered species, and other extreme facts that overwhelm us in our ability to take positive next steps. Tonight you will hear about staggering statistics and threats to our planet, but we also offer solutions which, if collectively and consistently undertaken, will turn things in a positive direction. So please share what you learned tonight with your family, friends, and neighbors, and it takes a village to save our village, and together we really can do this. So back to your footprint. I did a little research on the internet, and there are a number of different sites where you can actually calculate your personal carbon footprint. You can Google either carbon footprint or carbon footprint calculator, and you'll come to either the Environmental Protection Agency or Nature Conservancy or Climate Crisis, which is affiliated with the Al Gore movie Inconvenient Truth. You might even think about trying a before and an after. The before would be what you would do day to day before attending tonight's forum or listening to it on TV. And the after would be your day-to-day practices after attending tonight's forum. We're going to start with speakers addressing the local picture, and we will move more toward the global picture. We'll have a question and answer period at the end and a free raffle of carbon-friendly items and a gift for each of you to take home. To participate in the raffle, please take a number up front. You'll have to tear it in half and put it in the cup. And I think those people from that accounting firm, Anderson & Anderson, will be here later. Before I introduce our first speakers, we had hoped to have Marie Venezia from Sheldrake Environmental Center come here tonight to tell us a little bit about the center, but I want you and folks listening at home to know that this is their 25th anniversary year of when they became a nature conservancy. It turns out Marie and I were freshmen at the same dorm in Cornell University, and we went to the same school for 4 years, and we never met each other. But years later, with a common devotion to caring for nature and community, we have the opportunity to collaborate on events such as Green Week. And she is a gem in this community. I'm sorry she couldn't be here, but she is the executive director of a treasure in our community. Sheldrake, for those who don't know, is a not-profit organization whose mission is to inspire awareness and action in the community and to preserve, protect, and enhance local environmental resources. Participation in the center's ecology programs both teaches ecological concepts to the members of the community and enables them to become effective stewards of the natural world. Sheldrake Environmental Center is a community treasure worth knowing more about, and since Marie can't be here tonight, I encourage you all to look on the internet and become familiar with them. It's a wonderful family place. Mimi Corin, who is here with us tonight, wrote an article in Sound and Town Reports last week, and you might take a look at that as well. Well, our first speakers tonight are Irene Dambriunas and Maddie Cook, current co-presidents of the Mamaroneck High School Environmental Coalition. Maddie Cook is a senior at Mamaroneck High School. Her father has worked in conservation his entire life. Like father, like daughter, Maddie likewise developed an interest for the subject. Maddie joined the high school's Earth Club called the Environmental Coalition, or ECO, is it? ECO, when she was a freshman and became a co-president when she was a junior. Next year, Maddie plans to attend Temple University and continue her effort to help the environment. Irene joined the ECO Club in the fall of her freshman year, and with Maddie became co-president of the club. Aside from Irene's time spent with ECO, she currently works at the Flower Bar, a flower shop that encourages the sale of free trade and organically grown plants and flowers, as well as the recycling of their vases and other materials. Irene will attend McGill University in Montreal next year, where she plans to study botany and environmental science. Irene and Maddie will talk about the work of the Environmental Coalition at Mamaroneck High School, progress already made, and future goals. Welcome, Irene and Maddie.
MHS ECO, or the Environmental Coalition, is a club that has been at MHS since about the 1980s. While students from the past have accomplished plenty in their time, Maddie and I can safely say that ECO has never seen a change in the community quite like the one that has occurred in these past 3 years. Even in our freshman year, when we tried to negotiate a way to reserve parking spaces for carpoolers in senior lot, people thought we were crazy. The student body generally viewed ECO with indifference, which made our job of greening the school much harder. But sophomore year, we watched as both Mamaroneck High School and the world finally began to appreciate the cause. That was the year we hosted a viewing of An Inconvenient Truth in the tiered classroom. Teachers in the science department offered extra credit to those who attended, and many kids became new members of our club after seeing this film. Come our junior year, we decided to fix the problems within the extensive recycling system at Mamaroneck. We met with administration and asked them for one trash bin and one recycling bin in each classroom. The trash bins would have black bags and the recycling bins blue. Once this was done, we were faced with the challenge of making it clear to the students that using these new recycling bins was important. That same year, to keep with the movie viewing success we had experienced from the previous year, we showed segments from the series Planet Earth.
Every April, ECO has been known to host an extensive bake sale in the overpass in celebration of Earth Day. Usually we sell baked goods, buttons, and bumper stickers. We also offer petitions for students to sign as they head to their next class. This year, the event is going to be a little different. For the first time in ECO history, we have teamed up with Student Council to bring Green Week to Mamaroneck High School. MHS's Green Week features 2 different bake sales, an outdoor barbecue, and musical performances from Mamaroneck students. We will also be collecting ink cartridges, old batteries, and used cell phones to ensure that they are recycled properly. Earlier today, we even welcomed a member of the Greenberg Nature Center to Mamaroneck High School to teach the students about the wildlife of Westchester County. These past 4 years, we have witnessed through ECO how the movement for a better planet has affected both Mamaroneck High School and the globe. As the movement has grown, so has ECO. In the future, we plan to connect with 350.org and Catherine Hiller to help green Mamaroneck. Also, on May 21st, the high school will participate with 8 other schools in the county for a Westchester Walk to School Day. And thanks to supporters like the MHS Student Council, Catherine Hiller, Kathy Sable, and especially Beth Ratto, ECO's drive and ambition have definitely grown too. Thanks.
Thank you, Irene and Maddie. It's the students that are the next generation, and it's very encouraging to hear what they're doing. It's a progression like Green Week that began 3 years ago, and the work of Irene and Maddie, and we're going to hear about from our next speaker, Carissa Rose DeVito. Carissa is a junior at Rhinebeck High School and a member of the Reef Club, Rescuing Earth's Environmental Future. She will speak about the sustainable practices currently ongoing in Rhinebeck schools, fostered in large part by a strong partnership among parents, students, and administrators at all Rhinebeck schools, grades K through 12. Carissa will also present Rhinebeck's newest initiative, Wasteless Day '09, which seeks to reduce the school's waste in all areas and the long-term burden it places on the environment. Please welcome Carissa.
Good evening, everyone. I am here to inform you of what the Rhinebeck community has done to increase the positive impact our school has on the environment. I know I have limited time, so I will just highlight a few things. To begin, Daniel Warren, which holds grades kindergarten through 2, has a water pledge where students write pledges to conserve water on pieces of paper, which are then attached to a big water drop. Also, once a month, they recycle crayons, cartridges, batteries, and cell phones. There's also a greening of school supplies for grades kindergarten through 5, which is basically focused on reducing the amount of supplies ordered and focusing on recycled paper and local suppliers. Next, with FE Bellows, which holds grades 3 through 5, there is a walk to school week where every classroom is competing against each other, and it's trying to have the most kids walk to school. So each class, one class will win per grade, so 3 classes are winning in total, and the class with the most walkers per grade gets an ice cream sundae party, which helps motivate the kids to participate. With Rhinebeck Middle School, which is grades 6 through 8, we are also having a walk to school week. Also, the PTSA sponsored a Walking Wednesday, and we didn't pick Wednesday only because it rhymes, but also because the middle school principal, Dr. Eric Latinsky, figured out that students wouldn't have to bring instruments to school on Wednesday, which would obviously be more convenient for them to walk and to actually literally get them to do it. Also, there were Eco Wednesdays where emails were sent out to all families with kids in the middle school on Wednesdays, obviously. The emails were facts regarding ways to help the environment, conserve resources, use daylight instead of electricity, and to conserve water. Now, though, all the families that have children in grades kindergarten through 12 are receiving emails regarding ways to help the environment if their parents are in the PTSA. The Middle School Student Senate have been advertising ways on how to use less waste or to conserve. They have morning announcements reminding students about Earth Week, or to use less electricity, and they have been collecting names of participating students for a raffle to win a speed pass. And with the speed pass, they can go to the dining hall or the cafeteria, and they can, instead of waiting on the lunch line, they can easily go to the front of the line to buy their lunch. It's just the point of them to be motivated to participate and be proactive. Also, the PTSA has sponsored a pond cleanup last Sunday on April 19th for the middle school and high school. Which brings me to Rhinebeck High School, which is grades 9 through 12. This Thursday, we are having a Waste Less Day, Thursday, April 23rd. And through this event, the Reef Club, Middle School Student Senate, troop number 2723, 6th grade Girl Scout troop, have been helping get Wasteless Day ready. Overall, the point of this day is to reduce the waste from school and to increase recycling. Naturally, people collect garbage and throw it away. Presently, people are producing waste at a faster rate than the planet can absorb it. We are depleting our natural resources at an unsustainable rate. Therefore, our school is trying to learn how to waste less. It's a big habit change. Attention is also given to reducing paper usage, and also the consumption of packaged food, water, and electricity. Daylight. We've been also trying to enforce the fact that daylight saves energy and less heat is produced. Also, reusable beverage containers will be given out to every 10th kid on the lunch line on this Thursday for Wasteless Day, as opposed to plastic bottles. There's also a raffle with the speed pass in the dining hall. Kids, I explained this before, can go to the front of the line and buy lunch, and they can receive the beverage containers. With Reef, the moderator is Miss Nora Hansen, and in the past we have also kept track of how many kids have walked to school and kept track of it on a big thermometer so people can actually see. This year, helping with Wasteless Day, Ms. Hansen and I have worked together creating posters and signs and post-it notes, even if we actually posted a few post-it notes on the printers reminding teachers or staff members to double-side their papers instead of wasting paper. And I've also put up posters just advertising Wasteless Day and for kids to participate and get involved. So the point is for people to waste less. There's also a Wasteless Day PowerPoint, which is on the monitors in the middle school and high school. A parent has helped put that together. So if kids are walking in the hallway on the monitors, they can see the PowerPoint. And to conclude, basically, parents and students in the middle school and high school have come together to make things happen. Schools in the Rhinebeck School District are giving support. Even though the elementary, the middle, and high schools of Rhinebeck are all doing different activities, they have the same focus, which is to help the environment by involving students, parents, and teachers, and to especially encourage the students to become active. Even if the Wasteless Day signs and posters will hopefully strike their attention and get them to waste less. That's the whole idea. In the United States, about each person produces 4.5 pounds of waste per day. The world cannot use all of this waste. It's a serious problem. Even though people know they create waste, which is the problem, most of them are too lazy to waste less, and they don't even think about becoming part of the solution. Rhinebeck students are taking the waste problem seriously and taking strides to change our habits and preserve the environment for their own future. So it's the whole idea that parents, students, and teachers are coming and working together in the school district and getting kids aware of how important the environment is, and students actually have a chance to be proactive. Thank you.
Carissa, thank you very much. There's a lot going on. Carissa has a performance that she has to rehearse for this evening, so she's going to have to leave and get to that. Thank you very much. Well, by walking more and driving less and recycling more and wasting less, our carbon footprint starts to shrink as we hang on to more money in our wallets. Our next speaker is Mamaroneck resident Catherine Hiller. Catherine is a novelist and a book editor. She is the author of 5 books of fiction, including 17 Morton Street, a Book of the Month Club selection. Catherine also produced 2 documentary films shown on PBS and the Sundance Channel. The mother of 3 sons, Catherine has lived in Mamaroneck for 20 years. Tonight, Catherine will discuss Cool City's worldwide mission to reduce the carbon footprint and the effort now underway to green businesses in Mamaroneck Village. Ms. Hiller will also speak about the international youth organization 350.org, founded by Bill McKibben, devoted to addressing the climate crisis. In order to be a success, any good idea requires an effective network. Catherine's worldwide network casts a worldwide net for making worldwide change. Please welcome Catherine.
Hello. Thank you for being here and celebrating Green Week in the community. I'm going to talk about community on a village level, on a national level, and on a global level. Cool Cities Mamaroneck started 18 months ago when I sent out letters with actual paper and actual stamps to everyone in the 10543 area code who was a Sierra Club member. I also sent email to everyone I could think of. I was trying to attract a group of local activists who would work together to combat climate change. And the Sierra Club gave me their address list because Cool Cities is a Sierra Club initiative to combat global warming on a local level. 10543 is about as local as it can get. The aim of Cool Cities is to get citizens to encourage, or sometimes even pressure, local government to work towards sustainability. There are over 1,100 cool cities in the United States, including New York City, White Plains, and the town of Mamaroneck. Mayors representing 61 million Americans in 50 states have signed the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement to reduce global warming. Cool Cities provides a general template for local action, and they suggest a series of milestones that Cool Cities groups should achieve. The first milestone is getting a group of people together. And, you know, I don't know if you know this, but a few hard workers can be more effective than 2 or 3 dozen people who just come to meetings. So if you have even, say, 3 activists in your group, you can get a lot of things done. Right now, we have 8 or 9 core members of Cool Cities Mamaroneck who meet regularly, usually at my house. And these are talented and committed men and women. And please see me later if you'd like to join us. We certainly have more room in my living room. Anyway, we meet twice a month, but for 1 hour only. And I think this time limit keeps us very productive and means that going to our meeting doesn't take up a whole evening. It doesn't put you to sleep either. You have to be out there and, know your limits and know that we're working towards saying good night, everybody, at 9 o'clock. The second milestone a cool city is advised to take is to educate the community about global warming issues. And here, of course, our group hasn't been the only one. There's been so much going on in the last couple of years about, environmental education, letting people know, letting them know, for instance, how dangerous idling is. This is something I had no idea of before. So Cool Cities joined a number of other organizations in this community effort for education. We showed the film 6 Degrees Can Change the World. We had a table at the Historic Harbor Festival last year where people signed our petition and took our eco-quiz. And we invited Rosalind Peterson of California Skywatch to speak about wild cards of climate change. We also addressed local groups such as the Chamber of Commerce and the Mamaroneck Avenue Task Force. Milestone number 3 in any locality, if you're working these cool city steps, as we wanted to do. Some of us were kind of neophytes about this kind of organizing, and it was great to have a national organization behind us saying what we should do when. Anyway, milestone number 3 is to get the mayor of the locality to sign the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement to reduce global warming and get a greenhouse emissions audit through joining ICLEI. ICLEI is an organization which stands for Local Governments for Sustainability, and if you're wondering why the letters ICLEI stand for Local Governments for Sustainability, well, I'm wondering myself. But anyway, this ICLEI group provides many resources, including the software for an emissions audit. If you want to effectively reduce your carbon footprint, you have to know how big it is and why it's so big. Anyway, we were thrilled when on October 14th, 2008, at a Village Board of Trustees meeting, Mayor Savolt signed the petition and the trustees voted unanimously to join ICLEI. Now, joining ICLEI meant we could start our municipal greenhouse gas emissions audit, which is an accounting of how local government now uses energy, gasoline, electricity, and oil. And this is a baseline year we will use as, say, 2005, and then see what steps we can take to lower that. So the audit is done by looking at the various bills and so on from various government organizations that have these. And this creates the before that Beth was talking about earlier. When you have a before, then you're going to work toward improving the after. And government can make many changes which pay for themselves in a few years. Some changes can pay for themselves in as little as 18 months. I know that the town of Mamaroneck has a garbage truck that runs on veggie oil. And while the conversion was fairly expensive, apparently it paid for itself in 18 months. That's not very long. And year after that, it's going to save money. So these sorts of steps are not only good for the environment, they're good for budgets too. They're very practical things villages should be doing and are doing. And it's a good thing to know in these economic times that to be green is not a luxury, it's probably more important than ever now. Well, to get back to our little Cool Cities group, for one reason or another, it's taken us a while to get our emissions audit going. And as we wait for these results, our group of activists didn't want to just be waiting. So we decided to start another initiative. And this is called Magnet. It stands for the Mamaroneck Green Network. This is an alliance of green businesses who earn Magnet membership by following certain guidelines. Magnet members can display a magnet decal in their windows, which will identify them to the public. This Magnet initiative will officially be launched this Saturday, April 25th at 11:15 at the Farmers Market. So please join us there for more details. The Mamaroneck Winter Farmers Market, which goes until mid-May, is located at St. Thomas Episcopal Church, 168 West Boston Post Road, every Saturday morning, and it's a lot of fun to go there. and I hope you will be there with us this week. To get back to Cool Cities, milestone number 4 is to take some of the steps an analysis of the emissions audit suggests. So when we get this back, we can work and hopefully work with village officials to point out areas of waste and to think of ways that we can reduce our carbon footprint. And milestone number 5 is to work with the village to put in place what Cool Cities National calls advanced smart energy solutions. And I think that's open-ended enough to keep us going for generations. Speaking about generations, I want to tell you about what some people of the younger generation are doing about global warming. Some of you may remember Step It Up 2007, which organized 1,400 actions about climate change on April 14th, 2007, including one in Mamaroneck's Harbor Island Park. And I want to say, I'm sorry Carissa left, because students from the Reef Club with their advisor, Nora Hansen, were really helpful on that occasion, and they painted a beautiful sign. They were there, they got music for us, and it was a day that was really quite a thrilling day. Step It Up was started by 5 Middlebury students and their advisor, who is an environmental writer, Bill McKibben. And I want to let you know that one of these students graduated from the Hommocks and from Mamaroneck High School. And that would be my son. His name is Jonathan Warno. So John and his group of friends, with Bill McKibben, now that Step It Up 2007 is over, they have decided to go international. So they have started a group that has a website in 10 different languages, and they call themselves 350.org. Now, does any of you know why 350 is an important number in the environmental movement? Anybody over here? All right, well, yes, tell us, Andrea.
I'm not sure I'll get it right. Is it the parts per million of carbon emissions that is healthy or that is dangerous, or the target number of carbon?
Can you repeat that, please?
Okay, Andrea, you've got it more or less right. It's 350 is the number of parts per million in the atmosphere of carbon dioxide to air that is considered a safe amount. So the students in this organization consider 350, well, they're not students anymore, they're now in their early 20s. They've gotten so elderly. But in any event, this is the number that it is considered safe. It is a target number, and of course it would be good to lower it. So, as Step It Up was largely an internet organization, so is 350.org, and you can spend a lot of time clicking away and learning all the time about it. We are at 367 parts per million of carbon dioxide per air right now. So what does that mean? Does it mean we're all doomed? And as the 350 website says, the answer is no. We're like the patient that goes to the doctor and learns he's overweight or his cholesterol is too high. He's not going to die immediately, but until he changes his lifestyle and gets back to the safe zone, he's more at risk for heart attack or stroke. And right now, the planet is in its danger zone because we've put too much carbon into the atmosphere, and we're starting to see signs of real trouble: melting ice caps, rapidly spreading drought. We need, as they say on the website, which is very charming, we need to scramble back as quickly as we can to safety. So how do we create the political change to steer us to 350? And these students are or these young people at 350 are urging for an international agreement to reduce carbon emissions fast. And to demonstrate political will, 350.org is holding demonstrations all around the world on October 24th of this year. It's a Sunday. And there are over 500 actions already planned in 50 countries. So that's impressive what young people can do. And I'd like you to give yourselves a treat. Go to 350.org and press on. They have a 90-second commercial which they've created. It spreads its message entirely without words because there are 4,000 languages in the world, and everyone needs to know about the dangers of carbon. Anyway, my son was an environmental advocate and activist before I was, And I'd like to say also that my mother was too. Back in the 80s, when she lived in Larchmont, she got the first leaf blower restrictions going in the country, and because she couldn't take the noise pollution that was created. So I've been inspired by both generations, younger and older. Earlier tonight, Carissa spoke about parents and students at her school collaborating on various projects, and I believe that people of all ages, in various ways, will be working together for a better and a cooler planet. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Catherine. I hope folks here and folks at home will give Catherine a call, because Cool Cities sounds like a great organization. And I think the hope is that the environmental club or the eco club at the high school might be able to find a way to join forces with 350.org in the coming year. Our next speaker is a Mamaroneck resident and also a parent of a Mamaroneck High School student, Eric Yaverbaum. Eric brings more than 25 years of experience to the practice of public relations. He now runs, is it Erico? Yep. Communications in New York City, counseling a wide range of clients in corporate, consumer, retail, technology, and professional service markets, and building brands such as Sone, Subway Sandwiches, which is one of my son's favorites, IKEA Home Furnishings, Domino Pizza, H&M, and American Express, among many others. Eric frequently appears as a guest on national and regional television and radio programs. After Eric leaves here tonight, he's going downtown to CNN to tape something, so I'm very pleased that you're willing to stay for the entire event tonight. Eric is the author of several books, including the best-selling book, I'll Get Back to You, the first and second editions of Public Relations for Dummies, and Leadership Secrets in the World's Most Successful CEOs, which sold over 1 million copies and has been translated into 13 languages. Eric's current book, which comes out this year, is Life's Little College Admissions Insights, Top Tips from the Most Acclaimed Guidance Counselors. Eric's widely acclaimed Walk a Mile in My Shoes campaign helped push increased spending on stem cell research through the United States House of Representatives and led to his being named one of the heroes of public relations industry by Industry Bible PR Week in 2005. His current agency partnership with longtime business partner DIGO to create a brand for tap water called Tappening. The company was launched to provide education to the general public about the consumption of bottled water. Water is the most popular drink, or the most widely drunk beverage. People used to hoist it up from their wells in the back of their house, and I guess some still do. But more and more, our choices for drinking water have gotten further from the local source. Tonight, Eric brings it back home with a look at the costs of bottled water to our pocketbook and the environment, and the financial, health, and environmental benefits of using tap water. Just say no to bottled water and watch your carbon footprint shrink before your very eyes. Please welcome Eric Yaverbaum.
Out of great fear that you might Google my name after tonight, and in the interest of full disclosure, which I was criticized 48 hours ago by the mass media of not doing on a television show, I'll tell you a few things about myself that are not convenient truths. I helped or advised both Gore and Kerry on their runs for the president, and you know what happened with both. They lost. Obama didn't ask me, and he won. So maybe there's something to that. I am a pundit, a political pundit on Fox Television, where I'm considered the token Democrat on a panel of people that are much more highly credentialed than myself in politics. And I was very much influenced by my friend and my mentor Al Gore's movie, An Inconvenient Truth, but not interested enough to make a lifestyle change, interested enough to learn for the very first time, which I look at as a tipping point in many environmental issues in this country. I like to say my company, Tappening, whenever I'm speaking, is that a funny thing happened to me on the way to becoming more environmentally aware. It's a cross between an education from my teenage daughter and a crush on Cameron Diaz. My daughter would come home disgusted by my SUV sitting in the driveway, embarrassed to get out of it, made me get rid of it. I did that. I thought, oh gosh, I've done something great for the environment. She made me change the light bulbs in the house to energy efficient light bulbs, and that was my effort. That was what I was going to do. Got rid of the car, I changed the light bulbs, and then every day my daughter Cole would walk into the house with an Nalgene bottle. An Nalgene bottle that looks, I don't know if you're familiar with Nalgene, it looks exactly like this, which is exactly what my bottles look like. And I asked her, what's the issue with that? What's up? Now what am I going to have to do? What's next? And my daughter schooled me on the differences between tap water and bottled water. I didn't have a clue. Didn't know any of this. I'm going to tell you some of those facts in a minute. And I realized for a living, I get attention. I get attention for big, bad brands like I was introduced with. I get attention for myself. I'm in the media all the time. I've been in the press for 25 years. What could I do? Was there one small thing that I could do to make a difference using my talents? And I said, how easy would it be? I'm not asking you to turn down your air conditioners. I'm not even asking you to drive less. But just get educated on the facts of the differences between tap and bottled water. And if you're educated, maybe, just maybe, you'll see why you don't need to be buying bottled water. In this country, we buy 28 billion bottles of bottled water a year. That's to produce those bottles, we use 17.5 million barrels of oil. And just to put that in a little bit of perspective for you, that's enough to fuel 1 million cars for an entire year. It puts 2.5 million tons of CO2 in the air. For what? Because you get a bottle of water with cascading falls and mountains on the label, and people have a perception that it's safer, that it's cleaner, that it's better than the tap water because you're not sure what's in the tap water. It's not true. I realized with my partner that if I made one little change, I'm going to drink tap water. I'm never going to drink bottled water again. In my office, I have the very last bottle of bottled water that I drank with the date on it, and it sits on my windowsill as a symbol because I will never drink bottled water again. And I'm not saying that of the 28 billion bottles that we buy, that sometimes it's not very convenient, like in an airport, but God forbid I should be photographed with a bottle of water in my hand, so I don't even drink it there. As somebody who for a living gets attention, as somebody who for a living has been in the press, as somebody who for a living people have paid me a lot of money to get them in the press, to build their brand, to sell more pizza for Domino's, to sell more franchises for Subway, to sell more insurance for Progressive Insurance, I said I can bring attention to this issue, and maybe I can do it in a way that pays for itself. So my partner and I, I run a PR agency, my partner runs an advertising agency, so we do have some marketing resources at our disposal. We both invested $100,000 each, and we produced water bottles. And the whole idea was that if I could sell this water bottle on an educational website, that I would be able to self-finance the educational message. I could teach the entire country what the differences were and why the perceived purity that you think that you're getting from bottled water, you're not, and what you might be able to do in making a difference. And by the way, if the country didn't buy that, they must have bought my fiscal explanation. If you drink 8 glasses of water a day, you will spend $1,400 a year on bottled water. If you get it from your tap, you'll spend 49 cents. I don't know, and I've been asked by many people, well, what was it, Eric? Did the country become environmentally interested, or did the country go broke? And it's a combination of both. And I don't care which it is. I'm glad that less people are drinking bottled water. For the first time in the history of the bottled water manufacturers, the Cokes and the Pepsis of the world, all who love me. I hope nobody out here works for Coke or Pepsi. Their bottled water sales have not only gone flat, but they've gone down. There's thousands of groups who do exactly what we do, and we don't really care if you buy my bottle or somebody else's bottle. Just get a reusable water bottle and don't drink bottled water. We launched our campaign a year ago, November, with a campaign we called Message in a Bottle. We asked people to send us an empty water bottle with a message for the incoming president of Coca-Cola, Muhtar Kent, who took office a year ago, July. And we got 1 million bottles with messages in them. The country reacted. The website traffic was through the roof. We've sold 400,000 reusable water bottles, give or take, at $20 a piece. You can do the math. The Wall Street Journal has, and a lot of the press, and we've been criticized for that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And we targeted Dasani, and the reason that we targeted Dasani is because if you look real close, if you happen to have a bottle of Aquafina, if you look real close at the small print, it will say the source. The source is municipal tap water. If you look real close at the Dasani label, you'll see the source isn't listed. Well, we wanted everybody to know that, and we demanded that Coca-Cola put that on their labels, which they still have not. 1 million water bottles later, and an awful lot of embarrassment to Coca-Cola, no doubt, they used our message to tout their recycling programs. And they were very, very gracious with my partner and I in their time in explaining to us what they do for the environment. And by the way, bottled water aside, they do some wonderful things. They spend an enormous amount of money, but they touted recycling. They used us to tout recycling. Well, sadly, in this country, only 20% of water bottles are actually recycled. And when they are recycled, new plastic aside, because there is some new plastic that will not sit in a landfill for 1,000 years, if only 20% of the people are doing it, the rest is ending up in waste streams that cost us $70 million a year to clean up. That really could be going towards something more important, like making sure that the infrastructure that brings the water into our homes is better. But we're spending it to clean up bottles of bottled water. And the 20% that do go in the landfills, they'll be there 1,000 years from now. We're going to run out of room. If you test your water at home, and by the way, on our website, which is all educational, if you test your bottled water and you test your tap water, you're going to find the same exact stuff. If you get, and by the way, you can get a free test from New York State government to test your water. And you can test them side by side, and you're going to find the same disturbing things in both. It's a little bit concerning, but it's the same thing in both. There was a big story about trace elements of pharmaceuticals found in the tap water all over the country, and everybody, oh no, pharmaceuticals, I'm drinking Prozac. I don't know where the story originated from, but I know it got a lot of ink, but so did the story 3 months later when the Environmental Working Group tested tap or bottled water and found the same exact thing. When we started our educational campaign, we were immediately embraced by not only environmentalists and the press, but by the general public. We sold our initial inventory of 40,000 bottles, which we put 1,000 aside for press and celebrities. We sold 39,000 bottles in the first 48 hours and found out we actually had a business. And we made a lot of money from the business selling those bottles because people could now walk around in the gym and you could brand yourself, hey, I'm an environmentalist, I care. We decided to adopt tap water as our client. Nobody was representing them. They didn't have a nice bottle to put their product in. So we made them our client. We made tap water cool. And celebrities and Hollywood, everybody was carrying tapping bottles, and Desperate Housewives had it in the storyline. Cameron Diaz got put on hold at my office. It's the one person I didn't want to get put on hold. And People magazine had shots of celebrities du jour carrying our stuff. And that made it even cooler. Today we've sold 400,000 bottles. We've educated over 7 million people across the country. And we've made a lot of money. And the latest story is about the money and the greed, and that I'm really in this for the money. And we recently launched an educational campaign to promote that. You got a chance to go to our site, still up. You could vote. Was I a greedy entrepreneur? Was I a selfless environmentalist, or was I both? And I don't care how the voting turned out, although both is winning by a good majority now. I think it's important to promote to corporate America that it's okay to make, if you can do something good for the planet, it's okay to make money. And I'm not going to apologize for the fact that I've made over $6 million now since a year ago November, because I did something good, because 400,000 people today do not drink as much bottled water as they used to. I'm not going to apologize for that. Actually, I'm going to promote it. I'm going to brag about it. I'm going to tell corporate America, your job, if you're an officer in a Fortune 1000, is to increase shareholder value. That's what you sign on the bottom line for. Well, you can't increase shareholder value if all you're doing is spending. You need to find a way that you can make a profit. And if corporate America and the Fortune 1000 do that, we will save the planet. And I do believe, I've toured the country over the last year and a half. I've debated scientists who have 30 years experience that are PhDs, and they tell me that global warming isn't real. And they have stacks and stacks of data to prove it that I can't begin to understand. But I do understand that I can sit outside in February in New York City and have lunch because it's so warm. I don't know, that strikes me as odd. So through the process, what I realized and what I love to pass along to as many people as I possibly can is that I'm just one entrepreneur with one idea to make one small change, and I've been able to do it with 400,000 people and a microphone. That everybody sitting here today can make one small change and send a message to the rest of your friends who can make one small change. We all can make a difference, because whether you believe that the planet is in trouble or the state of the planet has been greatly exaggerated or something in between, personally, I won't be here when the planet's not here. I don't think my kids will be either, but my grandchildren might. And that concerns me. It concerns me enough to do something about it, and I think that it should concern everybody in the audience, and I think that everybody in the audience should try just to do a little something to alter your behavior to make a difference for the planet. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Eric. Excuse me one second. I think drinkable water is 3% of the water that we have in this planet. You know, the rest is salinated water, and I don't know that we want to get into desalinization. Water quality is obviously a big concern, and you know, the companies are coming into municipalities that have their own private springs, and in fact are exploiting the natural resources in local towns. And so that's a whole, you know, another issue to think about in terms of how we protect our water. But I applaud Eric for what he's doing. I really do. And I think that this is an example of how one person can make an enormous difference. Earlier, Catherine mentioned that a few people can do a lot. And we all have passions, whether it's the environment or it's children, it's women's rights, you know, whatever it might be. There are so many things to care about. And, you know, this week it happens to be our planet. And as a community, each of us, you know, alone can make a difference, and collectively, when you think that we can go home and look at the bottled waters that we get at conferences or what have you. Last year we had bottled water, and tonight I said we're not going to have bottled water. We can buy these things for $20, and when you think about this on a collective basis, we really can make a difference. So I hope that that is inspiration. That's the number one drink. We're going to move to the number two drink now. But first I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Marshall Case. Marshall Case divides his time between Shaftesbury, Vermont, and Larchmont. Marshall is President Emeritus of the American Chestnut Foundation, which he joined in 1997, and where he served as President and CEO from 2007 until the end of 2008. Mr. Case has been working in the conservation field for over 40 years. Currently, as President of Trust for Wildlife and President Emeritus of the American Chestnut Foundation, Marshall combines his interests to help protect the environment with a focus on biodiversity and wildlife habitat protection. Marshall is a fellow of the Explorers Club and has traveled extensively in Russia and Central and South America, working on conservation, research, and education projects for protection of wildlife. Marshall has formed over 30 nonprofit conservation organizations, including 12 state chapters of the American Chestnut Foundation and 17 regional chapters of National Audubon Society. He is a great believer in the strength of volunteers and networks. Along with nature filmmaking, nature news columns, and a weekly radio show called Nature Notes, Marshall mentors high school seniors who wish to pursue a conservation career. Marshall's honors include the Gold Medal from Natural Science for Youth Foundation, International Award for Protection of Biodiversity, and a 2008 Presidential Award for more than 10,000 hours of volunteer service in conservation and education in the United States. Coffee, coal, and neotropical migrant birds is a major focus of Marshall's current efforts to prevent further dramatic loss of migrating birds and habitat critical to their survival. Tonight, Marshall will link together reforestation of America's strip-mined coal lands, the benefits of shade-grown coffee in Colombia and other nearby locations, and providing year-round healthy habitats for neotropical migrant birds traveling between North America and Central and South America. Coffee represents the second most popular American drink behind water, making it a $4 billion industry here and a $60 billion industry worldwide. Shifting our morning cup of coffee, and there are a lot of thirsty drinkers out there, from open-grown coffee to coffee grown in the shade represents something every coffee drinker here can do to reduce your carbon footprint. Please welcome Marshall Case.
No, that's okay. Thanks. I can handle it, I think. Thank you, Elizabeth. Also, thank you for all the work you've done in this part of Westchester County and beyond to promote conservation and, in particular, years' worth of building up a network for Green Week. That's a great effort. I know it's taken a lot of hours and a lot of focus, and you've met a lot of good people along the way. So we all appreciate that. It's hard to know whether Vermont or Southwest Vermont specifically, or this community, whether you're going to vote for one or the other, if you want to choose to be. I like to be both places. I grew up outside of Philadelphia, so Temple is a great institution. I'm glad to hear you're going there. And McGill is too. I've done a lot of work with software people in developing a website for neotropical birds, and the person graduated from McGill, fine person that I've worked with a lot as a partner. So it's good to hear young people going on to these good universities and pursuing work in the environment in particular. It seems like we've lost a lot of ground. There are a lot more people getting involved, but we're still losing ground. That's the sad part of where we've come from over the past, at least in my career. I've watched a lot of losses, but we keep looking for ways to turn things around. And of course, the big challenge is we keep getting more people on the planet. So as we make gains, we're also having to adjust for the increased number of people who are, adding to the consumption, no matter what we do to cut back. I'd just like to start with a few comments that are encouraging. We've heard very encouraging comments already tonight from our presenters. And it makes me wonder why things aren't adding up faster to not still be propelling ourselves toward that cliff like a bunch of lemmings following somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. That happens in many aspects of life, if you haven't noticed recently, but we're all paying the price now. But there are a lot of positive things going on. When I flew down to West Virginia just a week ago, in fact, it was a week ago today, I participated in a conference with a working group, really, Fish and Wildlife and coal companies, coffee plantation people from the country of Colombia, and also a couple of nonprofits, Trust for Wildlife, which Elizabeth mentioned being one of them. Trust for Wildlife, by the way, you probably haven't heard of it. We've been operating for, this is the 26th year. We do it on about $18,000 a year, and there are no paid staff members. And we have a reach that goes as far as Russia and south to parts of Central and South America. And a lot of it's done because it's done in a simple way through a lot of networks. You can accomplish a lot, as you pointed out, through networking with people, the 350 and Bill McKibben, and the work that military students done is really outstanding when you look at the progress they've made in a very short period of time. But coming through the airport, my way back from trying to get down to Charleston, West Virginia and back is not the easiest thing to start with. You got to have a day almost on either side to get down there and through the different connections. But coming back into the airport to fly out of Charleston, on the rack, this is another message. I'm a great believer in things happening for a purpose. So on the rack was the current Time magazine, just came out last week, and this is their yearly kind of state of the environment. And it's a great picture of a tiger, vanishing tigers. One of the populations that's in real trouble is the Amur River Basin of eastern Russia. And even though they have wardens and a lot of people working on it, the poachers are clever and they can really outmaneuver anything we put in their way, and they make a lot of money by killing these tigers and using parts of them in the trade. But this is a good issue. I encourage you to get a hold of it. If you don't subscribe, see if you can get one from the stand, and take a look at where we are now and a little bit of the history. And just by chance, being a naturalist, I have to admit I save more than I should probably recycle or cast away as appropriate. And in my back volumes of material, just by coincidence, about a week ago, I found the one that I picked up in an airport the same week during Earth Week from a couple of years ago. And this is about the polar bear. You may remember this stark cover. And one of the people I was meeting with the next day, I was very disturbed again. I keep getting disturbed. I've been disturbed all my life by what happens to the planet, but from the time I was about this high. So I was really concerned. So I showed it to this person who happens to be in another field. And the response to this was, it's not really a problem. We'll put them in the zoos and we'll captive breed them. And if they don't have a chance to be in the wild anymore, it really doesn't make a difference. And I thought he was pulling my leg, but he wasn't. He was serious. So that would send him another message to me about there's still a lot of people out here who can have influence, as he can, who really need to begin to get the point of even, yeah, there is global warming. I've been a bird bander for about 35 or so years. I've done a lot of work down in the central Bahamas and studying the migratory patterns of neotropical migrant birds, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And I didn't put these birds that are hanging here to alarm you. But we do lose millions and millions and millions of migratory birds every year just from a lot of the obstacles that have been put in their way over the last 4 or 5 decades in particular. And that's one effort that a lot of groups go after, is how to reduce the loss of these species as they go among the Americas. But also to give you an idea of the color. I think you can see the beauty of the indigo bunting. I also put it out on these paintings done by a Russian artist friend of mine. And these are all on our site. If you go to neotropicalbirds.org, it's all one word. It's a free site. You can look at these images and get a little bit of a story about what I'm talking about tonight. The other thing on the way back, and I'm just going to go a little bit around in the early part here of my presentation because I think it tells a story. 2 different flights. I was on United and I was on Delta. So having done a lot of other work and stayed up until the wee hours of the morning to go down and be part of this working group, I decided to relax and read the magazines. They happen to have a lot of focus on the environment because of Earth Week and Arbor Day. And in one of them, it's a profile of Dennis Hayes. How many people know who Dennis Hayes is? Okay, he was the co-founder of Earth Week, Earth Day. And he's here with Daryl Hannah, who's a famous person to a lot of people. And she's putting a lot of her effort into the conservation movement now, working with Dennis Hayes. So it's another partnership of, you know, well-known people in certain circles at least. And it gets into a major piece. In fact, it was the focal point of this magazine. A lot of people fly Delta, so it's another way to get exposure through good advertising. So that was good to see. And then probably my favorite, not probably, my favorite actor, Paul Newman was too, but living actor, is Harrison Ford. And so 3 pages in, it's a very clever, did you do this ad?
No.
Anyway, this is a great ad. It shows a rainforest, tropical forest, with the parts cut out, because you know we're losing a lot of, we've lost over half of the Brazilian rainforest already. And as we lose more, what they did is they did a cutout. So they show lungs with the missing, you know, rainforest in the image, which I thought was a very clever way to do it. And it talks about, Harrison Ford talks about his commitment to Conservation International. He's, I think he's 2nd vice president or something like that. And he puts a lot of his personal effort now into the conservation movement. So that's also good, that there's a profile on a person like this who is a well-known actor and also has made a big commitment in life to help turn things around. So let me get to the main topic here. Let me ask 2 questions, since we're talking about coal, which produces energy, and coffee, which produces pleasure, also produces harm, depending on who's on the end or other, you know, the other end of growing it, not the consumption level. How many people in this room use electricity? Raise your hand. Everybody? You not raised? You raised? Okay, you used it too. Okay, how many people drink coffee? Okay, most everybody. All right. Well, you know, some people might be living in a tent these days. I don't know. The economy's been pretty bad, pretty harsh on a lot of people, particularly on Wall Street. So they're, you know, running out to the woods now. Maybe they'll even come up to Vermont. We actually can live off the land, but most people up there have electricity. I know that we're backwards compared to the cities, Philadelphia and Boston, but you know, it's still pretty easy going up there. You can have a good lifestyle, and most of us do have electricity. Let's look at coal. The image over on the right is a American chestnut tree. That's probably about a 90-foot tree found up on the ridgelines in Tennessee. And there's a story behind chestnut, which I'll give you briefly because it ties heavily into the coal industry and will be more and more over with decades to come. As Elizabeth mentioned, I've been head of the Chestnut Foundation, now emeritus. That means I'm working a part-time as an advisor, and I still do a fair amount of work with it, particularly with the coal industry now, and now this tie to coffee, which we'll connect up here in a minute. And coal is, of course, an essential right now. We can't go away from it as much as we might want to. It's still a necessity in life, and we have to learn how to deal with it better than we do as we plan for change to put in substitutes, you know, into the system. But it's certainly something that a lot of people depend on, and it's important, and it's an important aspect of a lot of the lifestyle in this country. Up in Vermont, we happen to have nuclear, which produces a lot of our electrical needs. But a lot of places deal directly with coal, and that's where their livelihood, both for working and for use, comes from. When you strip coal off the land, you do a lot of damage. You don't, but the people who are involved in that industry do. And it basically leaves a moonscape. You know, literally, it looks like, if you've been to any of the coal areas or flown over them, if you look down, going over West Virginia in particular, you look out of the window of the plane, they're now blowing the tops off mountains. You all knew that, I hope. And when you blow the top off the mountain, everything goes with it. Salamanders, frogs, turtles, bears, people that might be there if they didn't check ahead. Well, now, whatever's there is gone, and it becomes a moonscape. And even with the strip mine methods, the same thing happens. Now, we do have a federal law that regulates how you put something back in place of it, how you reclaim the land. The federal law happens to focus on making a grassland, more of a prairie type. It's a compact surface, and the law is really not good. In fact, it's very bad. But duking it out with Congress and people who have vested interest in this is not the best way to go. So what we've been trying to do through the Chestnut Foundation as a lead approach is to change the way the land is treated in reclamation. And we've been able to prove over the last 8 or 10 years, particularly using American chestnut and some other hardwoods, that if you actually go down 4, 5, 7 feet with a tine and a big piece of equipment, you rip the land open, so it doesn't look like a pretty rolling grassland, but it's a bunch of rubble to start with, that these trees will grow very successfully and very rapidly, and they will close the canopy within a very short period of time. So we've been doing a lot of research with the University of Kentucky and Virginia Tech and some other institutions, and we have enough research now to show that this is the way to go for the future. And there's a group that's called the Appalachian Regional Reforestation Initiative, which is focused primarily on 7 states in Appalachia from Ohio down to Tennessee, kind of the heartland of the coal company areas. And as we change the way we approach the science, we're going to change the law. It's inevitable. So it's the right way to go. It takes maybe a little bit longer, but it will hold up over time. These giant trees, to give you an idea of what the landscape looked like back before the Asian blight came in, before we had plant quarantine laws, and the blight, it's a fungus, was discovered in 1904. Unfortunately, the Bronx Zoo gets the rap because that's where it was discovered. That doesn't mean where it came in. But that's the origin point. And this blight moved out at a pace of 50 miles per year in all directions. The historic range of American chestnut was Maine to Alabama, west of the Ohio River Valley. So most all the states east of Mississippi. Not quite so much into northern Illinois and parts of Wisconsin, and not into much of Michigan. But other than that, pretty well was throughout the rest of the range except for Florida. Historically, it was in the Panhandle during the Ice Age period. 4 billion trees were lost in 50 years. 25% of the eastern forest was knocked out by a fungus that was brought in on plant stock from China. That's pretty scary. And because the tree was so abundant, nobody had studied it. So when it was eliminated so quickly, they didn't really know what to do to try to bring it back. So the Chestnut Foundation is working with a backcross breeding program. It's a classic plant breeding program in order to restore the trees back to the eastern forest. And the only reason we can do this, have the possibility to do it, is because the root system is not attacked by the fungus. It attacks it above the surface, which means you never get mature trees. We're starting to find a few. We've got search teams out. We've got 16 state chapters when West Virginia is fully approved. And we have a huge network of volunteers out there who are actually searching for these trees. Initially, I was told 12 years ago when I came with the foundation that there weren't any out there because foresters have been taught in school that chestnut doesn't exist anymore. But we found hundreds, which is not a lot over the entire range, but enough to give us genetic material that we've been able to capture throughout the former range. Which means we have different, climatic conditions and altitude and river valleys and mountaintops. So as we bring the tree back, eventually it takes 7 years roughly between generations, and we need 6 to 7 generations. It's a long view program. We're 25 years into it. We will again see these trees, I don't think in my lifetime, but it's possible. This tree grows 2 to 2.5 times faster than any other hardwood. So we're using that on to reclaim strip mine land, and this is very good. Now let me jump quickly to coffee, and then I'm going to connect the dots for you with neotropical migrant birds. Coffee is, as Elizabeth mentioned, the second most traded commodity in the world, which shocks a lot of people. They're not aware of that. Of course, water is free to some people, it is to a lot of us in this country, unless you have a meter. I guess you have to pay for water in the city. Up in the country, it's free. Up in Vermont, we get it at no cost. But it's a second most traded commodity, which is interesting because that gives you a network. If you think about where can you get the most out of the least amount of time and get the most benefit, you look for networks and you look for things like Eric's done, and you look at an area like coffee, and that's going to talk briefly about. Elizabeth mentioned the numbers. It's a $4 billion business in this country, $60 billion worldwide. Pretty impressive numbers. The countries that produce, there are different qualities if you're a connoisseur of coffee, but certainly the Andes area If we're looking at Costa Rica, Ecuador, Colombia, and Peru, northern Peru, and then some other countries, Panama, there are probably 10 or a dozen, Guatemala, Nicaragua, there are others. I'm going to focus briefly on Colombia, and I'll tell you one in a few minutes. The source of the coffee has grown more and more into what we call open-grown coffee. And this is because, as one example, they strip the rainforest, which tells you something about the carbon footprint. When you take away the oxygen producer, you got a bigger problem. And then they use a lot of, the coffee industry uses a lot of pesticides, fertilizers, and they burn the soil out within about a 5 to 6 year period. So then they cut another rainforest, leave that behind, and on and on and on. So we're losing a lot of land through that one way that we're losing a lot of the rainforest, which is critical to our survival, eventual survival. The other, so that's a quick picture of open grown. Why do they do open grown? More money, faster. That's the reason for it. No regard for the environment. 97% of the species of birds that lived in the rainforest before, when you have an open grown coffee plantation, disappear. You're left with 3% of the species. It's the flip when you look at shade-grown coffee plantations, where you actually tuck the trees into a natural setting. It's a more robust flavor. It's slower to mature, so coffee drinkers, connoisseurs say that it's a much better taste as well. The other thing it does, it's a social responsibility, because the people who are working on these farms, obviously being hit by pesticides and fertilizers, and they get exposed to a lot of things that aren't healthy for them. And the other thing, compared back to the coal, when you strip the land of coal, or you strip the rainforest area to the south in this case, you open up a lot of problems. You lose your water quality, you lose your air quality, you destroy the habitat, the wildlife and the plant species disappear, and it's a very serious problem. And of course, food production is basically eliminated for wildlife as well, so those populations crash too. Those are the harsh things to look at, but they're real. And there's actually one of many books that I picked up recently. It's called Confronting the Coffee Crisis. And it gives you a lot of specifics on what goes on, particularly with the growers. And it's basically small growers versus agribusiness, which is what a lot of life is about today. People more conglomeration, more larger operations, and also bigger opportunity for failure. Anytime you get too big, even in a business, people who do well and they expand, they get into areas they don't know much about, they can fail the company. That's happened many times over. And now that we get biotech coming in, and still very unknown in early stages, we're not even sure what will happen with, with that end of production of particularly of plant material. So this is a very good book. It gives a lot of solid information, quite readable. In the coal side of things, there's a video put out by a disc by the Appalachian Regional Reforestation Initiative, which is under the Office of Surface Mining, Department of Interior. And they're the ones that I'm working with now on this whole issue. And the good thing is that the scientists, instead of being discouraged by the system, the bureaucracy they're in, because they're good scientists, they keep searching for better answers. And that's what led them to working with the American Chestnut Foundation and looking at reclamation of land by growing trees that actually do very well in these stripped areas. They send down a deep taproot, they find the water, they get the nutrients they need, and they take off. So we're talking about carbon sequestration, we're talking about potential for biomass, better water quality, better air quality, wildlife food production. Historically, when chestnut was at its prime back in the turn of the century and before that, late 1800s, half of all the nuts from all the nut-producing trees in the East, if you collected nuts off the ground, over 50% of all the nuts would have been from American chestnut, which is remarkable. It blooms late. Up our way in Vermont, it's about July 4th. Pretty close to that here in Westchester County. You get down into Virginia, it's probably going to be about 7 days earlier. Rarely gets hit by, if ever, by a late frost. And as you go more north of here in Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire, late frosts happen, and they can happen in the middle of June. So this tree never got hit by the late frost. Therefore, it gained more and more territory, and that's how it wound up being a dominant species. So through ARI, the Appalachian Regional Reforestation Initiative, they came up with another idea. A fellow by the name of Patrick Angel, working with Brent Walquist, who is the gentleman I've worked with he's the director of Office of Surface Mining. They said, why don't we connect up trying to do a better job, not just on the coal company area, but down with the coffee plantation growers, and we'll use neotropical birds as the hook. Because like anything, you need something that's sexy, right? Or something that's got color or it's got charisma in order to grab the attention of people. There's a lot of competition today. That's why you obviously know what you're doing in the industry, because you've captured a lot of that for different organizations you work with. There are a number of, these are packages of shade-grown coffee. And this is just to give you an example of the way they're, the look of them. This one happens to be from Costa Rica. It's got a quetzal. It's a very magnificent bird with long tail feathers. Stands about this tall in the wild. That's one packaging. This is organic fair trade. This is one I picked up in Costa Rica on a trip I made down there 2 years ago. Lovely packaging, but it's a little confusing. There's almost too much on this one. It jumps out at you. Probably quite expensive to produce, I would guess, too. And there's a new one that's come out that I just found out about at the meeting last week called Cerulean Warbler Conservation Coffee. It's pretty simple packaging. Got great colors, has a good image of the bird, and it gets the point. Conservation coffee, shade grown. It's fair trade. It's organic. And here's where we're going to connect the dots. This one bird is going to do a lot for making coffee and coal get together. And the reason it's going to happen is because in the last 4 decades, this bird has gone from a population of 1,300,000 to 400,000 birds. We're now losing 3% of the population a year. So in 10 years, you can add the numbers up. We're going to be down to 3. We're going to lose 100,000 birds in the next 9 years. If we don't turn it around pretty fast, this bird's going to be gone off the planet. Like a lot of other species are disappearing very quickly. Some are disappearing before they're even documented. People like E.O. Wilson have been working on that for years. So where's the hook? Well, cerulean warblers, 80% of the population, summers, their breeding territory is in that 7-state area of Appalachian coal country. And about 70% of the total population winters, actually that's where they're from. We borrow them, but they're from there. But they winter in Colombia, the country of Colombia. So to try to narrow the field down from Costa Rica, Ecuador, all the countries, we're starting to work with Colombia. And representatives from the coffee trade industry in Colombia were at the meeting last week. And some people are thinking, okay, well, how's the coal company going to get on board here? So why would they care about these little birds, which are about the size of that one hanging there? Who cares? What if they just, like the polar bear? Who cares? Although we can't put them in a zoo and breed them, like you probably can with some polar bears. The coal companies care because if this bird gets to the point where the population drops down to maybe 200,000 or 250,000, it's going to be put on the threatened or endangered species list. That changed the whole process of how you deal with your business, because now you're regulated to another degree. First of all, with the Indiana bat, that drove them nuts. Then the cerulean warblers come along. There's always something else. Now that we have the Endangered Species Act and it's intact and doing pretty well, here's a species, if we don't pay attention to it and work together, it'll cause a problem. And probably you can pass the cost on to us. They're always passing costs on in any business in order to stay well and healthy. So if the coal companies, and they were represented there, not in the numbers we wanted last week, but they were there. There were enough of them there to pay attention and get the message back into their network. If we can get the coal companies to be more aggressive about participating in this reforestation initiative with what I talked about briefly with hardwood trees, with chestnut as the lead. And they will plant based on plants that benefit cerulean warblers and a lot of other birds that are connected to it. The neotropical birds are pretty good numbers. And I could name off 50 species, say, that go between our area of New England, New York, and go down to Central South America. The most long-distance flyer I can think of right offhand, actually on the farm that I have, it's a 92-acre farm, I farm for birds. Okay? I have never run into, I actually ran into one guy last week that farms partly for cerulean warblers in a place in Kentucky. So my whole farm is devoted to neotropical migrants. And I have a bird called bobolinks, which are rapidly disappearing from the whole northern area. Beautiful birds, great song. They go all the way to northern Argentina. They can go as far as northern Argentina and back every year. A remarkable flight. And they don't have any gas stations to stop at. You know? The best place they have between here and Maryland is Central Park. Did you know that the best place to bird in the migration time is Central Park? They're flying over and they see all this land has disappeared since they were up here last time, and they see this oasis. And so they all go down and make it a great place to bird. So as we get the coal companies and the coffee plantation owners making change, which is also producing a better product, certainly in terms of coffee, we're going to actually see very positive results. I'm very hopeful about this. I think that it could be a dramatic change in turning a lot of species around. Cerulean warblers is going to be tough to bring back from a low number like that, but I used to work for the International Crane Foundation for a few years, and the population of those birds was down under 30 at one point, and now we've got hundreds through a lot of hard work and dedication, but it's still possible. You just don't want the genetic pool to get down to the point. When you have 14 left in the whole genetic pool, you're going to have some basic problems anyway. So the time to start is now, when we know we have better science. We can get people paying attention because they care. The coffee plantation owners I met with certainly care. The coal company people are interested. They care because they're going to be regulated. And you get them together, and we have a pen pal program that we're starting too. So we're going to have the kids involved. They have to take science and English in Columbia in order to participate in the program. And up here, we're going to require that they take Spanish and science. And we already have teachers in Columbia who are going to make this happen on their end. And I hope we're going to get a school or two here involved in the program, because I've been put in charge of that committee on education. So I get to say, well, we can stretch it up to Mamaroneck. You know, it's not Appalachia, but we're coffee drinkers. So we can get the hook in because we drink probably more coffee than they do down in Charleston, West Virginia, I'm sure. So where does the solution come from? That's a pretty, is this the cup of coffee you have every morning?
Every morning.
Oh, okay.
Every morning.
I wonder she gets so much done in a short period of time. You drink that much coffee, you gotta be on hyperdrive. How many people here drink 3 cups of coffee on average every day? Half the group. Wow. How about 1 or more? I know at least half of you do that. Okay. All right, that's good. Okay, so where are we going with this? You already figured it out, right? We go to shade-grown coffee, and we help people, lifestyles. I talked to a couple of the growers that were at the meeting last week, and there are a lot of people, a lot of small growers. We're talking about an acre or less of land for shade-grown coffee. A lot of these farms are in that category. I think over 50% of them are in that category in Columbia. So they're not cutting the rainforest. They're managing the land. They now get, on average, $15,000 per family, which is a good number there. They now they're safe from pesticides and fertilizers and harm that could come to them health-wise. They're helping us by not just producing a good cup of coffee, but by making sure the rainforest is intact and the lung of the earth is still, partially intact due to them. They're now actually, they have water. They're getting water. They didn't have it before. Now they're getting water. It is trucked to them. It's probably trucked in like where I worked down in Cuenca in Ecuador, they trucked it out to a camp, and now we have a system there, a filtration system we put in through Rotary, which is a good outfit too, doing a lot of good work around the world. And they have water. They are actually sending their kids to school instead of having them work the land. And some of them are even going to college. Pretty amazing turnaround. And so the more we shift to shade-grown coffee, and the more people we can get to do that, the more we're going to benefit these people. They're going to get a better wage and a better lifestyle, and they're going to help keep us healthy. And it's not that big of a shift, and the prices in the last, say, 3 or 4 years have come very close together. You can now buy shade-grown coffee at a very reasonable. You might pay $1 more for the same size unit, but some of them are getting even narrowing closer than that. So that's a way we can do something. You know, this is pretty amazing. The second most traded commodity in the world, we're a big user of coffee. The network's ready to happen. All we have to do is get out, tell people about it, get it going through the schools, get our parents to shift over immediately. They may grouse about the $1 more per bag, but you know, just tell them, hey, there are better benefits. The return on that is much more than $1. So I'd be happy to open up for questions if you have any. Yes?
Could you speak to the differences between shade-grown, organic, and fair trade coffee? Because these are kind of marketing buzzwords
Right.
as well as have, you know, ecological meaning that I'm not sure the consumer or even the well-intentioned environmental consumer really understands. And if you could speak to those 3 different things that everybody sees on the supermarket shelves, you know,
Yeah,
how
it's...
to make the best estimation and the best choice for what you're just told.
Yeah, the question is the fair trade, organic, and shade-grown, is that right? The differences. The fair trade is essentially focused on the aspect of the conditions that it's grown under and the people who are getting, they're getting more, the growers and the workers in those small systems are getting more money than they would otherwise. That's the simple one on that. Organic is because the conditions they're grown under are healthier and safer and more sustainable. The shade grown is due to the conditions and how you grow it. And there's a certification process for that. So every time you move from, even moving from fair trade to shade grown, if you throw them all together, shade grown, organic, and what was the other one? Shade grown, organic, and fair trade. That certification process becomes much more of a commitment. So it's been slower to happen for obvious reasons. Some of it's probably financial and the commitment that you make. And even with some of the wines that are grown that way now, more organic wines, the certification process and the expense is fairly hefty in some cases anyway. Yeah, I don't know the answer, specific answer. I would say yes, because the conditions that you have to meet to have shade grown. But 100% organic is that's the toughest. The Smithsonian has a brand called Bird Friendly, and I went on the internet to look it up, and I couldn't find. There were no outlets in Vermont, which didn't surprise me. Although we do have Ben & Jerry's and we have some other things up there. But there were no outlets in Vermont. And then I looked in New York. I said, this is a no-brainer. There'll be a lot of them. There weren't any. But there were 2 roasters under the same name and both in New York City. And the roaster is the source of, then the market. And so I thought, either they're not updating their site or they're not doing very well with this because it's 100% organic. And at the meeting, sure enough, on the chart, Yima, who was the woman who was from the Colombian Coffee Association, put the chart up, and I went halfway down, bird-friendly, 1,900 bags. And the others were like, thousands and thousands. So I asked her, she said, yeah, it's too tough. The restrictions are keeping them from, growing market share. So you have to watch that too, right? You get, maybe you try to do too good too early, too soon, and you wind up not even getting the point across to people and getting them to participate. So that's a little bit, there's a lot more to it, and I don't have all the specifics, but that's basically what we're dealing with here. And also, I have to say, when you go into a store and they have a product that's shade grown, you may have a hard time finding it. It tends to be kind of standing alone or in the midst of a lot of other So we have to do a better job of getting the local stores, and I think, Elizabeth, you went to is it 9 stores you went to? Or
We've
9 outlets?
actually, we can maybe shift to something I was going to
Okay.
get to in a minute, but we put together a chart that you can all take home of companies on the internet that sell shade-grown coffee. Some of them are blends, so you get to, it gets nuanced. But you know, these are countries that include Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Peru, Brazil, Guatemala, Colombia. Kona coffee is all shade-grown coffee. That's quite expensive. So there's a whole variety. But we've got, during Green Week, a number of the coffee sellers in our region, in our immediate community, I should say. Starbucks, Bradley's, Avenue Bagels, and Kern's are selling shade-grown coffee. And, you know, truth be told, I went into the stores and asked, you know, do you have shade-grown coffee? And it was an education process, and this is a process. They weren't aware of it. It turns out that Starbucks does sell shade-grown coffee, but the people who work at Starbucks weren't necessarily aware of it. But this is all a process. And, you know, keep in mind also that in some respects, the coffee companies are possibly a bit ambivalent because much of their coffee is grown in the sun. And some of the coffee they're selling is grown in the shade. So this would require a shift that the consumer asks for. But you know, I think that one other point I want to make about Colombia, I think this is true. Colombia used to grow coca for cocaine. Mm-hmm. So when you think that they're not supplying this anymore, they're giving us coffee instead of cocaine. This is a really positive step. And there was something that I read that in the 1990s, 35 of the 50 countries that were doing most of the deforestation were coffee growing companies. And that is a bigger contributor to climate change than the emissions that come out of our cars. So this is the second most popular drink in the world. It's a $60 billion business. And if you think that people, and I think it's 3.1, the average is 3.1 cups a day. Truth is, I actually drink. I think that I actually drink tea, but I've been testing this shade-grown coffee. You know, the birds eat the bugs, so you don't have to have pesticides. And you know, I think that it's like becoming an aficionado of wines. They pick up the flavors and all the rest of it. And you know, we can become coffee experts. I'd love to come back next year and find out what's your favorite brand. It'd be a great thing to do. I hope folks here and folks at home will go into stores and say, I'd like to try shade-grown coffee. The demand has to come from us. And really, we'd like to try this in Westchester County. Tell your friends about it. I can put this on an email and send it to you. It starts with a first step. I'm not a major marketer. I think that Eric may be able to give me you know, some pointers, but really I do think these things start at a small level. Elsewhere in the country, it's probably going on. But you know, Westchester is a county with very educated people, and for the most part, we're probably willing to spend an extra dollar to do something that has a social conscience attached to it. So you know, hopefully we can make a difference by doing this.
I think in Colombia, it's coffee or guns, or we could say guns and drugs. So what choice do we want to make? And seriously, that's what a lot of it's about. Everything's consumer driven. If we consume the right stuff, we can make change. And coffee is second most traded commodity. That tells us something. A lot of people out there are consuming it. We can change their habit. We can change a lot of things on our planet, and also for the good of the people. Yes, there's another question.
What are they doing in Brazil where they have a major deforestation to try to change?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what are they doing in Brazil where they have the major deforestation? Actually, she's part German. You'll know the Gisel, the shoe.
Giselle.
Giselle.
Yeah, the model.
She's now. There's an article also in Delta on her. What she's doing, she's putting a lot of her. It's a percentage of all of her shoe sales are now going toward saving putting aside more and having more impact on slowing down and hopefully eventually stopping the loss of the Brazilian rainforest. The challenge there is that when they hit the 50% mark, and the government, as I recall, had said some years ago, 8 or 10 years ago, they wouldn't cut more than 50%. Well, then they got to the 50% mark, and we'll only take 2% of the rest of what's left. You know how that goes. A lot of that's it's the political situation. A lot of it's they can't regulate it. It's a huge area still. It's very hard to have oversight with. It's like when I'm traveling between Vermont and here, and 15 cars go by me at 95 miles an hour. I got a green plate on my car, so I stay over to the right, because our speed limit in Vermont's 50. And but there aren't enough cops out there to pull over everybody, so they only get a few. And it's the same thing when you're dealing like in Brazil. It's a huge area still, very hard to have the oversight. Same thing with the Amur Basin tigers. Best programs, best intentions. The fact is there's money attached to it, and people get away with it. But the continuing loss of rainforest is a huge problem in the world, and a lot more people have to get on board on that. But we can start with this. This is a good way to do it. Are there any other questions?
We can take questions for any of our speakers if you'd like, and whether Marshall or anyone else. So please, if you want to grab the microphone for your table, and then we'll keep it over here. Yes?
Yeah, not so much a question as a comment. I read recently that the Brazilian president had asked for some global funding.
That the Brazilian president had asked for some global funding. So the comment is that the Brazilian president had asked for funding to save the rainforest. The question is, where is the money going to go? Well, it's a reasonable question given the circumstances that we are, currently facing. There are steps that we can take that don't necessarily, cost more money. It's a matter of looking at what we're doing every day. And I do think the concept of this carbon calculator is kind of interesting, to go back and take a look at what we're doing on a macro level, on a micro level. Do you unplug appliances when you don't use them, et cetera? We've got this list. I'm just going to digress a second, that we have in the front for what you can do during Green Week, that recycle, reuse, et cetera. And it really is just a basic set of tips to take a look at. If there aren't any more questions, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Mimi, please.
You just mentioned unplugging appliances and electrical devices. Plugging and unplugging such things on a regular basis is going to wear out the plug, perhaps the outlet, which will then require more manufacturing to replace the worn out. So it seems like, as in many things, there's a trade-off, and I don't have the numbers to say.
Mimi's point is that by unplugging things on a regular basis can wear out the plug and wear out the outlet. I hadn't actually thought about that, but I have seen recommendations when people go on vacation that you unplug regularly used appliances because it still is drawing current, and it has an impact on a daily basis. That's probably a little much. I'm always happy when I remember to unplug the coffee maker. I usually go back and check it a few times just to make sure that that's happening. But I'm sure like everything else, there's a balance. What we want to do tonight is encourage people to get started on this. So we're going to have a raffle. I don't know if everyone has a number here. I think some people came in late. If you don't have a number for the raffle, why don't you grab a number from Sarah. And then I'm just going to kind of continue to talk for a minute, and then we'll get back to that. So I mentioned who's got shade-grown coffee in town, and yes, please.
You can get shade-grown coffee as close as Trader Joe's. They have it by the can, and it's in a nice green can, and it tastes great. So that's easy.
Trader Joe's.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all right. All right, so we're going, let's see what we've got. Well, we've got Green Week this week, so while we're getting the numbers for the for the raffle. We'll go back to that. There's a calendar for Green Week up at the front, and hope that everybody will pick that up. We're halfway through the week. Next weekend there's going to be a Mamaroneck River cleanup and a neighborhood cleanup. The Quilt Cottage is doing something really wonderful. They've got the blanket Linus, I think that's what it's called, and this is for the benefit of children that don't have blankets. People are encouraged to bring in their pieces of fabric and yarn, etc., and they make blankets and then donate it to children in need. There's going to be a wine tasting. That's for people after they've worked very hard to clean up the river. And that's on Mamaroneck Avenue. And the Voracious Reader is having an Earth Day celebration in the afternoon. And Palmer Art is having a display of sustainable framing. You think about, you go in and you get your pictures framed, and this is from wood in sustainable forests and mats with sustainable paper. So this is the thing that we can think about every time we're using a piece of wood. Are we replanting trees to sustain the planet? Let's see. Are we all set, Sarah? Why don't you pick a number out of the cup, and then we're gonna find out who's. We'll say the number. Okay. What number do we have? Number 5. Do we have a number 5 here? Well, we can pick another number. That's okay. Now, for folks who get Shade Road coffee, I hope you'll stay in touch with me and tell me what you think, because you know, we'll see if that's. Do we have a number 7? All right. Okay. We've got a bag of Green Mountain shade-grown coffee. We can just, we'll pick them up. We'll get them at the end of the show. So let's. You don't drink coffee, all right? Well, then we're going to give you a water bottle. Okay.
That's BPA free. I'll take your coffee.
All right, you know what? Here you go. I got it for you. We'll get the rest to folks after we're all done. I think that'll be a little easier. Okay. How about another number? Sarah, you pick them and just go ahead. All right. You get a choice. Would you like coffee or would you like a bottle? All right. There you go. Congratulations. Number 2. How about up here? Did either of you take a?
I have one, but it's not 2.
All right. Do you have a number 2?
No, I don't have 2.
29. Would you like coffee or a bottle? Okay, very good. Okay, that's fine. And we got one more. This is for the cerulean warbler. 33? Okay, great. We'll get that to you. Well, thank you very much. Let's see. I think we've come to the end. Let me just take a look at my notes here for just 1 second. One thing I want to mention about Green Week is that we're encouraging people to leave their cars at home and walk. We've got Brewers Hardware and Foley's Hardware giving discounts on your shopping carts, the ones on wheels. Not the ones that you take from Stop and Shop, but actually the ones that you can do your laundry in. And support our local merchants, which is obviously, a good thing right now. That way we are, using less gas. Obviously, I'm sure our local merchants would appreciate that. But taking the inspiration from what's going on in Rhinebeck School and what will be going on at Murray Avenue, I think maybe all the elementary schools in the next couple of weeks, Walk to School Week. You know, the more we kind of get into the habit of doing it, I think Rhinebeck started with just Wednesdays, and then it evolves into something, and then it isn't such a big deal anymore. Then you say to yourself, well, why didn't I walk to school every day? Now, obviously, for people who have to go on to work, it's not that easy, but making these changes sort of one step at a time make it possible, and then you turn around and you say, wow, that wasn't so bad. So we also hope that you'll come out to these events, because the nice thing about living in Larchmont and Mamaroneck is this truly is community. And the nice thing about Green Week, and the hope is that in the coming years, is that it becomes more and more of a community event. I can honestly say that by getting involved in these programs, I have met wonderful people, and some of them are here tonight. I've made friends. We've been able to do really good things together, and it's the kinds of common interests that, you know, bring people together and make community strong, not only for us, but for our kids. Thank you all very much for coming here. Wish you all the best. Happy spring, and have a good Green Week. Take care. We have saplings for everyone to take home. They're crab apples, and there are planting instructions. They're up front, and they're hospitable to migrating birds. So that's another small step for man and womankind.